My girlfriend dumped me for a crypto millionaire who promised her a life of luxury. She didn't realize I was the one who actually managed his portfolio as a ghostwriter. When I stopped giving him tips, his wealth vanished. Now they're both asking me for a small loan. All right, Reddit, buckle up, because this story is absolutely wild, and my cousin told me I had to share it here. This whole thing went down over the past year and just hit its peak 2 weeks ago, when my ex and her new man showed up at my apartment literally begging for money. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. I'm 29, work as a freelance financial writer. Basically, I write market analysis, investment newsletters, and research reports for people who want to sound smart but don't have the time or expertise to do the deep dive themselves. It's a pretty sweet gig. I work from my apartment in Seattle, set my own hours, and pull in about $120,000 a year if I hustle. Not millionaire money, but I'm comfortable and own my place outright, thanks to a decent inheritance from my grandfather. Got into this line of work kind of by accident. After graduating with my economics degree, I spent 3 years at a financial advisory firm doing market research and writing internal reports. The work was fine, but the corporate environment was suffocating. Meetings about meetings, office politics, dress codes, commuting an hour each way to sit in a cubicle doing work I could easily do from home. My manager was this guy who'd constantly schedule calls at 5 in the afternoon just to look busy, then spend the whole time talking about his fantasy football league. The breaking point came when they announced mandatory return to office 5 days a week after we'd been successfully remote for a year during the pandemic. I ran the numbers, realized I could make almost as much freelancing without the overhead and stress, and gave my 2 weeks. Best decision I ever made. Building up the freelance client base took about 6 months of grinding. I'd bid on projects through freelance platforms, reach out to financial advisors directly, write sample newsletters to show my range. Started charging $50 per 1,000 words and gradually worked up to $200 as my reputation grew. Now I've got enough regular clients that I can be selective about new projects. My apartment is in Capitol Hill. Nothing fancy, but it's got exposed brick, decent natural light, and enough space for my 3 monitors and standing desk setup. I bought it in 2019 for $280,000 when the market dipped, spent another $30,000, making it exactly how I wanted it. New appliances, refinished the hardwood floors myself, built custom shelving for my book collection. It's my space, and I actually like being there, which is more than most people can say about where they live. The building itself is from the 1920s, converted from an old warehouse. High ceilings, big windows, solid construction. My unit is 950 square feet, which is plenty for one person. The bedroom fits my king-sized bed and a closet system I installed myself. The main living area is open concept, which I've set up with my workstation on one side and a comfortable couch situation on the other. Kitchen is updated with decent appliances. Nothing fancy, but everything works properly. I've got a balcony that faces east, catches morning sun. I keep a small herb garden out there during summer, mostly basil and cilantro since I cook a lot. The unit came with 1 parking space in the garage, where I keep my 2018 Subaru Outback. Practical vehicle, good in snow if I want to go up to the mountains, enough space to haul stuff from IKEA or Home Depot when I need it. The neighborhood is solid. Walking distance to good coffee shops, a decent gym, grocery stores that aren't overpriced tourist traps. I've got my routines. Morning coffee at this place called Vivace, evening walks around Volunteer Park, weekly meal prep on Sundays. Nothing Instagram-worthy, just a functional life that works for me. The job itself is pretty straightforward. I've got a degree in economics from University of Washington, spent 3 years working at a financial advisory firm doing research before I realized I hated office politics and decided to go solo. Turns out there's solid demand for someone who can explain complex financial concepts without sounding like a textbook. I write everything from retirement planning guides to cryptocurrency analysis to stock market reports. Some clients want weekly newsletters, others need quarterly deep dives. I charge by the word and by complexity. Most of my clients are financial advisors who need content for their websites, small investment firms that want to look bigger than they are, or individual investors who are too busy running their businesses to keep up with market trends. It's all legitimate work, completely legal, and honestly pretty boring most of the time. I'm basically a ghost who makes other people look informed. Now let me tell you about Kelsey. I met Kelsey in March of last year at a friend's engagement party. She was a friend of the bride, worked as a dental hygienist, and had this energy that just pulled you in. Dark hair, great smile, actually laughed at my jokes. We hit it off immediately. She seemed down to earth, told me she was tired of dating guys who had no ambition or direction, said she wanted someone stable, someone who had their life together. She'd apparently been through a string of bad relationships. There was the guy who couldn't hold a job, the musician who lived in his van, the personal trainer who was more interested in his physique than actually building a life. Standard Seattle dating horror stories. She made it sound like I was exactly what she'd been looking for. Someone with their act together, someone responsible, someone who could actually plan more than 3 days into the future. That was me. I had savings, a career, decent credit, and could hold an actual conversation. The bar is pretty low these days, apparently. We started dating, and things moved fast. She basically lived at my place within 2 months. I didn't mind. She was easy to be around, didn't create drama, and actually seemed to appreciate that I wasn't a broke man-child still figuring out life at 30. She'd bring groceries, cook dinner while I finished up work, and we'd watch shows together. Normal relationship stuff. The first few months were honestly great. We'd established this comfortable routine. I'd work during the day while she was at the dental office. We'd meet up for dinner, maybe catch a movie or go for walks around the neighborhood. Weekends, we'd explore different parts of the city, try new restaurants, do the Pike Place Market thing, normal Seattle couple activities. I introduced her to my parents when they visited in May. They liked her well enough, though my mom made some comment later about how Kelsey seemed very focused on material things. I brushed it off at the time. My mom tends to be overcritical of anyone I date, still hasn't forgiven my ex from college for some perceived slight at a family dinner 7 years ago. Kelsey got along great with my friends. Jake liked her because she didn't try to change our gaming nights. My buddy Tom from work said she was good for me, that I seemed more relaxed. Even my cousin, who's super picky about people, gave her a thumbs up. Her friends seemed cool at first. There was this whole group of them who'd known each other since high school. They'd do brunches every Sunday, wine nights on Thursdays, that whole deal. I'd tag along sometimes, but mostly let Kelsey have her girl time. I'm not really the brunch crowd type anyway. Sitting around for 2 hours talking about reality TV and relationship drama isn't my idea of a good time, but I'd show up occasionally to be supportive. The group consisted of maybe 8 women total, though the core was about 5 who were always there. Christina was the ringleader, worked in real estate, and loved being the center of attention. There was Amy, who taught yoga, Jessica, who worked in marketing, Laura, who did something with nonprofits, and a couple others whose names I honestly never remembered. They were all around our age, late 20s to early 30s, and they all seemed to be in this weird competition about who was doing better in life. Every conversation somehow turned into subtle bragging about accomplishments, purchases, or relationship milestones. It wasn't obvious at first, but once you noticed the pattern, it was everywhere. The problem started around month 4 when Kelsey began making comments about money. Not in a gold digger way exactly, but more like she was suddenly hyper-aware of what everyone else had. She'd mention how her friend bought a new car, or how another friend's boyfriend took her to Hawaii, or how someone got engaged with this massive ring. It was always casual, always framed as just sharing information, but I could feel the shift. It started small. She'd see something on social media and make an offhand comment about how nice it must be to afford designer handbags, or how cool it would be to take a European vacation. I'd point out that we were doing fine, that we'd traveled, that material stuff wasn't everything. She'd agree, but the comments kept coming. Then she started sending me links to expensive restaurants with captions like, maybe for a special occasion? Or luxury hotels with, wouldn't this be amazing? I'd look at the prices and just think about how that money could be better spent on actual investments or savings, but I didn't want to seem cheap, so I'd take her to some of these places occasionally. I'm not saying you need to spend a fortune on me, she said one night while we were watching TV. I just think it would be nice to do more exciting things sometimes, you know? We'd literally gone to Vancouver the month before for a long weekend. I'd planned the whole thing, booked a nice hotel, took her to good restaurants. But apparently that didn't count as exciting. I should have seen the warning signs. The way she'd scroll through social media and sigh. The way she'd compare our life to what other people were posting. The way she started dressing differently. Buying clothes that seemed designed to impress rather than just wearing what she liked. She was becoming someone else, and I didn't recognize the shift until it was too late. The real catalyst was this guy named Brent. Brent showed up at one of those Sunday brunches in July. He was dating one of Kelsey's friends, this girl named Christina, who worked in real estate. Brent was one of those guys who needs everyone to know he's doing well. Loud, flashy, drove a leased BMW M4 that he acted like he owned outright, wore designer everything, talked constantly about his investments, dropped names of expensive restaurants he'd been to. Everything about him screamed trying too hard. The watch was a Rolex, but it looked fresh out of the box, not like something he'd owned for years. The clothes had visible logos, The kind people wear when they want to make sure you know how much they spent. His shoes probably cost more than my monthly car payment, but they looked uncomfortable as hell. The guy claimed he made his fortune in cryptocurrency, said he got in early on some coins, made strategic trades, and now he was set for life. He'd show people his portfolio on his phone, these screenshots showing six-figure balances. He'd talk about how traditional finance was dying and crypto was the future, and anyone who wasn't investing was going to regret it. His whole vibe was exhausting. He'd dominate every conversation, turn every topic back to himself, make sure everyone knew about his latest win. Someone would mention going to a concert and he'd jump in with how he went to some exclusive music festival. Someone would talk about a restaurant they liked and he'd mention the private dining experience he had at some chef's table somewhere. Here's where it gets interesting. Brent was actually one of my clients. Had been for about 8 months at that point. I'd never met him in person before that brunch. All our communication was through email and encrypted messaging apps. He'd found me through a referral from another client, said he needed someone who understood crypto to write market analysis and investment recommendations that he could share with potential investors. He was trying to recruit into some kind of informal investment group. The initial outreach was pretty standard for a new client. He sent a detailed message explaining what he needed, his timeline, and his budget. Said he was building a community of investors who wanted to get into cryptocurrency, but needed guidance. Wanted someone who could break down complex market trends into actionable insights. Red flag number 1 should have been that he never asked about my credentials or wanted to verify my expertise. Most legitimate clients want to see samples, check references, maybe have a call to discuss the work. Brent just asked if I could do it and what I charged. Red flag number 2 was how he wanted the reports formatted. Not as educational content or analysis pieces, but as confident predictions written in first person that he could pass off as his own thoughts. I believe Bitcoin will reach 65,000 by Q4. Instead of market indicators, suggest Bitcoin could reach 65,000 by Q4. Subtle difference, but it basically turned me into his ventriloquist. The arrangement was simple. He'd pay me $2,500 a month. In exchange, I'd send him detailed weekly reports about cryptocurrency trends, which coins looked promising, what to avoid, and general market analysis. He wanted it written in a confident, assertive style that made predictions sound like certainties. Red flag, sure, but I was just the writer. What he did with the information wasn't my problem. I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why someone who was supposedly a crypto expert needed to pay someone else for weekly market analysis. But $2,500 a month for maybe 6 hours of work was too good to pass up. I rationalized it as him being too busy to do his own research, or wanting a second opinion, or any number of legitimate reasons. The work itself was straightforward. I'd spend a few hours each week reading market news, analyzing price movements, checking technical indicators, and writing it all up in a clear, confident style. Sometimes the predictions hit, sometimes they didn't, but I made sure everything was based on solid analysis, even if I was writing it like gospel truth. Brent would respond to each report with brief acknowledgments. Got it, thanks. Or, this is perfect. Never any questions, never any pushback, never any indication he was actually reading the content critically. He was just taking what I sent and using it verbatim. What I didn't know until that brunch was that Brent was basically using my research to convince people he was some kind of crypto genius. He'd take my reports, memorize the key points, and then regurgitate them at social gatherings like they were his own insights. The screenshots he showed people of his portfolio? Probably real, but the gains were from following my research, not from any actual expertise on his part. The dude was basically a well-dressed parrot. I didn't say anything at the brunch. Just sat there drinking coffee while Brent held court, spouting off about market trends and investment strategies that I'd literally emailed him 3 days earlier. He was using my exact phrasing in some cases. It was surreal. He was going on about how Ethereum was undervalued compared to its utility, how certain altcoins were positioned for breakout runs, how the institutional money flowing into crypto was just getting started. All analysis I'd written for him, or all presented like these were brilliant insights he'd personally developed through years of expertise. The worst part was watching people eat it up. They'd ask him questions and he'd answer with these confident explanations that were just paraphrased versions of my reports. He had the talking points down perfectly, could rattle off statistics and trends without hesitation. If you didn't know better, you'd absolutely think he was the expert he claimed to be. I didn't say anything at the brunch. Just sat there drinking coffee while Brent held court, spouting off about market trends and investment strategies that I'd literally emailed him 3 days earlier. He was using my exact phrasing in some cases. It was surreal. Kelsey was absolutely mesmerized. She kept asking him questions about investing, about cryptocurrency, about how he got started. Brent ate it up, gave her this whole spiel about taking risks and trusting your instincts and having the vision to see opportunities others missed. All stuff that sounded impressive but meant absolutely nothing. On the drive home, Kelsey wouldn't stop talking about him. Did you hear how much he made last month? $30,000 from his phone. That's insane. Christina is so lucky. Brent clearly knows what he's doing. Maybe you should look into cryptocurrency more. It seems like that's where the real money is. I just nodded and changed the subject. The whole thing felt weird, but I wasn't about to explain that the genius she was fawning over was literally reading from a script I wrote. Over the next few months, Brent became a fixture in our social circle. He was always around, always talking about money, always making sure everyone knew how well he was doing. And Kelsey was always paying attention. Every group gathering turned into the Brent show. He'd arrive last to make an entrance, usually with some story about whatever luxury experience he'd just had. Private wine tastings, exclusive reservations, VIP access to events. Christina would be on his arm looking pleased with herself, and the whole friend group would orbit around them like they were celebrities. The dynamic shifted noticeably. Conversations that used to be about normal life stuff, work stress, funny things that happened, weekend plans suddenly became all about money and status. Who was buying what? Who went where? Whose partner was doing better? It was exhausting, but nobody seemed to notice except me. Kelsey absorbed all of it like a sponge. She'd come home from these brunches full of energy, talking about Brent's latest insights into the market, how he predicted some coins rise, how he was mentoring people on their investments. I'd listen and nod, knowing full well that the insights she was so impressed by had come from my keyboard the week before. She started making more pointed comments about my work, how it was stable but not exactly exciting, how I was smart and could probably do more if I took some risks, how maybe I should be more ambitious, think bigger, aim higher. Brent started with nothing and look at him now, she said one evening while we were making dinner. He saw an opportunity and went for it. Maybe you should look into crypto more seriously. The irony was killing me, but I couldn't exactly explain that Brent's success was entirely dependent on purchasing my expertise. I'm happy with what I'm doing, I'd say. Steady income, work I enjoy, financial security. But don't you want more? Don't you want to really succeed at something? The implication that I wasn't succeeding was pretty clear. The comparisons became constant. Brent travels here. Brent invested in that. Brent knows these people. It was like she'd found the measuring stick she wanted to use, and I was coming up short by design. Didn't matter that I owned property and he leased a car. Didn't matter that I had actual skills and he had expensive accessories. What mattered was the image, the flash, the story he could tell. I watched her change over those months. She started spending more on clothes, getting her nails done regularly, talking about wanting to redecorate my apartment to be more sophisticated. She'd scroll through Instagram for hours, looking at influencer lifestyles, designer boutiques, luxury travel accounts. The woman I'd started dating, who seemed practical and down to earth, was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Her job at the dental office started bothering her more. She'd complain about the hours, the patients, her boss. Said she felt like she was wasting her potential cleaning teeth when she could be doing something more meaningful. I suggested she look into dental hygiene programs that led to higher certifications or management roles. She said that wasn't the kind of meaningful she meant. The thing is, I was perfectly happy with my setup. I made good money doing work I didn't hate, had financial security, owned property in one of the most expensive cities in the country. I wasn't trying to get rich quick or impress strangers at brunch. I was building actual long-term stability. But that wasn't flashy enough for Kelsey anymore. I could see where this was heading. The way she looked at Brent like he was some kind of visionary. The way she'd compare what we did versus what he and Christina did. The way she'd sigh when I'd suggest a normal weekend activity instead of something expensive and Instagram-worthy. Friends started noticing too. Jake pulled me aside at a barbecue in October and asked if everything was okay with us. She seems different lately, he said, like she's not really present when you're together. Yeah, I've noticed. You know what's happening, right? She's got eyes for someone else's lifestyle. Probably. You gonna do anything about it? What's there to do? You can't compete with a fantasy. If she wants something else, she's going to find it whether I fight it or not. Jake looked at me for a second. That's pretty zen for a guy whose girlfriend is clearly checking out. Or realistic. I'm not going to beg someone to appreciate what I bring to the table. The truth was I'd already started emotionally preparing for the end. When you can see the writing on the wall, there's no point pretending the building isn't on fire. It all came to a head in November. We'd been together about 8 months at that point. I was actually starting to think long-term about the relationship. Not marriage yet, but definitely considering what the next steps might look like. Maybe that was naive given all the signs, but I'm an optimist. Kelsey came home one evening with this weird energy. She sat down on my couch and just stared at me for a minute before speaking. I think we need to talk about where this is going. Here we go. I care about you, she said. You're a good guy. You're stable and responsible, and you've been really good to me. But I don't think we want the same things. What things are you talking about? I want more out of life. I want to travel, experience things, not worry about budgeting for every little expense. I want to be with someone who's going places, who has big ambitions. I own my apartment outright. I make 6 figures working from home. I took you to 3 different cities this year. What exactly is missing? It's not about what you have. It's about what you're building toward. You're comfortable staying where you are. I want someone who's reaching for more. The translation was obvious. She wanted someone like Brent, someone flashy, someone who talked big, someone who looked successful even if the foundation was shaky. So, what are you saying? I think we should break up. I think it's better if we end things now before we get more invested. I just sat there for a second processing. Part of me wanted to argue, to point out all the ways this was ridiculous. But honestly, what's the point? You can't logic someone out of a position they didn't logic themselves into. All right, I said. If that's what you want, I'm not going to fight you on it. She looked surprised, like she expected me to beg or negotiate or promise to change. But I've never been that guy. If someone wants out, they want out. No point making it harder than it needs to be. I can grab my stuff this weekend, she said quietly. That works. She packed her things that Saturday. The whole time she kept starting sentences and then stopping, like she wanted to say something but couldn't figure out how. I just helped her load boxes into her car and wished her well. No drama, no big speeches, just a clean break. Or so I thought. About 2 weeks later, Christina posted photos on social media from some big group dinner. The whole crew was there. And right in the middle of the photo, sitting next to Brent and Christina, was Kelsey. She was wearing this red dress I'd never seen before, laughing at something Brent was saying, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. The timeline became pretty obvious. She'd probably been interested in Brent for a while, was just waiting for an opening. When that didn't happen fast enough, she created her own opening by dumping me. My friend Jake texted me the photo with just, "Are you seeing this?" "Yep," I replied. "Bro, she upgraded from a guy with actual assets to a guy who peaked in 2021. This is going to be hilarious to watch." Jake wasn't wrong. Here's the thing about Brent. His success was entirely dependent on my research. Every trade recommendation, every market insight, every prediction he made was coming from the reports I sent him. He had no actual knowledge of cryptocurrency markets, no understanding of technical analysis, no ability to read market trends on his own. He was a performance artist, and I was writing his script. For the next couple months, I kept doing my job. Brent kept paying me $2,500 a month. I kept sending detailed reports. He kept pretending to be a genius. I didn't care that he was dating my ex. That relationship was over, and I'd already moved on emotionally. I was actually seeing someone new by January, a lawyer named Michelle, who had her own life together and didn't need me to fund her Instagram fantasy. But then March rolled around, and I got an email from Brent that changed everything. "Hey man, I need to cut back on expenses for a while. The market's been rough and I'm reallocating funds. Going to pause our arrangement for now. I'll reach out when I'm ready to restart. Thanks for everything." Translation: he was running low on money, and my reports were expendable. I responded professionally, told him no problem, that I understood, and to reach out whenever he was ready to resume. Then I moved him to my inactive clients list and went about my business. I didn't think much about it until I started seeing social media posts from the friend group. Brent and Kelsey were official, like relationship official, posting couple photos, going to events together, doing all the stuff that signals this is serious. Christina had apparently moved on to someone else pretty quickly, which should have been another red flag, but nobody seemed to notice. The posts were exactly what you'd expect: fancy dinners, expensive outfits, weekend getaways. Kelsey was living her best life with her crypto millionaire boyfriend, who was totally going to take care of everything. Except he wasn't a crypto millionaire. He was a guy who'd gotten lucky following someone else's research, and was now trying to maintain an image he couldn't actually afford. Within a month, the cracks started showing. Brent stopped posting about his trades. The confident market predictions dried up. His social media went from, "Look at this massive gain I just made," to generic inspirational quotes and recycled memes. The guy had nothing to say because he had no insights of his own. I heard through Jake that Brent had started asking people in their circle for investment opportunities, not because he wanted to invest in them, but because he was fishing for money. He'd talk about having cash sitting around that needed to be deployed, trying to find out if anyone had business ventures he could get involved with. Classic behavior of someone whose funds are running dry. By May, things were getting desperate on his end. He reached out asking if I could send him some free analysis just to help him make some quick trades to get back on track. I politely declined and reminded him that my services required payment. He never responded. Then in June, Kelsey started posting less frequently. The fancy dinners stopped. The weekend trips disappeared. Her captions went from excited and bubbly to vague and philosophical. You could practically watch the relationship deteriorating in real time through social media posts. I wasn't following any of this obsessively. Jake would just send me updates because he found the whole thing entertaining. I was busy with work and my actual life. Michelle and I had started talking about taking a trip to Japan in the fall. Things were good, but the universe wasn't done with the irony yet. In August, my doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone and the building has a security system, so whoever it was had been buzzed up by another resident. I opened the door, and there they were. Brent and Kelsey, standing in my hallway looking like they'd both aged 5 years in the past few months. Brent had lost weight and not in a good way. He looked stressed, tired, like he hadn't been sleeping. His clothes were still expensive but rumpled. The confidence was completely gone. Kelsey looked even worse. She'd cut her hair short in a way that didn't suit her face. Her smile was forced, uncomfortable. She couldn't maintain eye contact. "Hey," Brent said, trying to sound casual. "Got a minute to talk?" Every instinct told me to shut the door, but I was curious where this was going. "Sure," I said, stepping aside to let them in. They walked into my apartment like they were entering a crime scene, looking around at my space, my setup, probably doing the math on what it was worth. Brent's eyes lingered on my monitor setup, the custom desk, the expensive ergonomic chair, all things he'd probably had to sell. "What can I do for you?" I asked, staying standing. Brent cleared his throat. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Things have been rough lately. The market's been brutal, I've had some unexpected expenses, and I'm in a bit of a tight spot financially. Sorry to hear that. I was hoping maybe you could help me out. Just a small loan, maybe $5,000, to get me through this rough patch. I've got some trades lined up that are going to pay off big. I just need some capital to execute them." I almost laughed. The guy had literally used my research to build his entire persona, convinced my ex-girlfriend that he was this financial genius, and now he was in my apartment asking me for money. "Why would I loan you money?" I asked. "Because I'm good for it. I've made plenty of successful trades. This is just temporary. I'll pay you back with interest in like 2 months, tops." Kelsey finally spoke up. "We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. I know things ended badly between us, but you're a good person, and I thought maybe you'd be willing to help." The audacity was impressive. "Let me make sure I understand," I said. "You dumped me because I wasn't ambitious enough. You started dating him because he seemed successful, and now that his success has evaporated, you're both here asking the stable, responsible guy for money?" Kelsey looked at the floor. Brent tried to maintain eye contact, but couldn't. "It's not like that," Brent said weakly. "Then what's it like?" Silence. "Here's what I think happened," I continued. "You built your whole image on research and insights you were buying from someone else. When you couldn't afford that research anymore, you had no idea what to do. You started making bad trades, losing money, trying to maintain appearances while everything fell apart, and now you're scrambling." Brent's face went pale. "How did you—" "Because I was the one selling you that research, Brent. Every single market analysis, every trade recommendation, every insight you passed off as your own for the last year and a half came from me. You were paying me $2,500 a month to make you look smart." The look on Kelsey's face was priceless. Absolute shock, confusion, and dawning realization all at once. "You were one of my clients," I said. "A freelance financial writer, remember? That's what I do. I write market analysis for people. You were just another client who stopped paying." "Wait," Kelsey said, turning to Brent. "Is this true?" Brent couldn't even look at her. The silence was answer enough. "So all of it," she continued, her voice getting higher. "All the predictions, the trade analysis, the market insights, everything you told everyone about was coming from him?" "It's not that simple," Brent stammered. "I still made the trades. I still had the capital. I just used his research to inform my decisions. You told people you were a genius. You built your whole reputation on being this financial expert. And you were just reading from a script this whole time? I leveraged available resources to maximize returns. That's smart business." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Smart business would have been building actual knowledge instead of renting someone else's expertise. Smart business would have been saving money during the good times. Smart business definitely wouldn't be showing up at your ghostwriter's apartment begging for a loan. Brent's jaw clenched. So you're not going to help. Why would I? You can't pay me back. You have no income, no real skills, and based on what I'm seeing, probably no assets left either. Loaning you money would be like setting it on fire, except at least burning cash would keep me warm. You're really going to be like this? Kelsey said. After everything we had together? Everything we had together ended when you decided I wasn't exciting enough. You wanted someone with ambition, someone reaching for more, remember? Well, you found him. Turns out he was reaching for my research the whole time, but hey, at least he was reaching for something. Neither of them had a response to that. I think you should leave now, I said, walking to the door and opening it. They walked out without another word. I watched them get into an older Honda Civic that definitely wasn't the BMW M4 from last year. Brent's hands were shaking as he tried to get the key in the ignition. I closed the door and went back to work. Had a report due for an actual paying client about emerging market trends. Real work, real money, none of the performance art. Jake called me an hour later. Apparently, Kelsey had posted some cryptic message about being betrayed and not knowing who to trust. The comments were full of her friends asking what happened. Christina had already commented asking if she was okay. Dude, you have to tell me what went down, Jake said. I gave him the full story. Are you kidding me? This is the best thing I've heard all year. So Brent's whole thing was a scam, and Kelsey traded you for a fraud? Wouldn't call it a scam exactly. He was paying for a legitimate service. He just chose to present that service as his own expertise. Still hilarious. What are they going to do now? Not my problem. Over the next few weeks, the fallout spread fast. Christina apparently confronted Brent at some group dinner, and he admitted everything in front of everyone. The whole friend group imploded. Half of them felt stupid for believing him. The other half were mad at Christina for making it public. Brent's social media went dark. No more posts about trades or investments. His accounts went private within a week. Word through Jake was that he'd moved back to his parents' place in Tacoma, claiming he needed to regroup and focus on building real skills. Translation: he was broke and had nowhere else to go. Kelsey tried reaching out 3 more times. First was a text saying, "Can we please talk? I made a huge mistake." I deleted it. Second was a long email explaining how Brent had manipulated her, how she'd been caught up in the lifestyle, how she realized now what she'd lost. I read it once and archived it without responding. The third attempt was showing up at my building 2 weeks after their loan request. The doorman called up asking if I wanted to see a Kelsey. I told him no and to not let her up again. She left a handwritten note that he gave me later. It was 3 pages of apologies and explanations. I threw it away without reading past the first paragraph. My buddy Tom saw her at a coffee shop in November with some new guy. Older, drove a Lexus, wore a suit. Tom said she looked miserable, like she was going through the motions. The guy was on his phone the whole time they were together. Christina tried adding me on social media in December. I ignored the request. She sent a message saying she wanted to apologize for everything, that she'd had no idea what Brent was really like, that the whole situation had taught her a lot about people. I left it on red. Jake kept me updated on the gossip because he found the whole thing entertaining. Apparently, Kelsey broke up with Suit Guy after 2 months. She'd moved back in with her parents temporarily, got a job at a different dental office across town, kept a low profile, stopped going to the group brunches. Brent resurfaced briefly in January with a LinkedIn post about starting over and building authentic success. He'd enrolled in some online finance certificate program. The post had maybe 12 likes. No comments. The mighty had fallen and nobody cared enough to watch. Meanwhile, my life moved forward like none of it had happened. Michelle and I went to Japan in October like we'd planned. 2 weeks of actual vacation, not performative travel for social media. We stayed in traditional ryokans, ate at tiny restaurants where nobody spoke English, took a cooking class in Kyoto, got back refreshed and even more solid as a couple. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.